Welcome back to our journey through Genesis. Today, we're picking up with a story that's all about choices, consequences, and God's unwavering faithfulness. It's the story of Abram and his nephew Lot, in a moment that would change the course of their lives forever. After their eventful time in Egypt, Abram, Sarai, and Lot returned to the land of Canaan, heading back north toward Bethel and Ai. They weren't just returning with their lives, they had returned with incredible wealth. The Bible tells us they had vast flocks, herds, tents, silver, and gold. God had blessed them immensely. But here's where a new kind of challenge emerged, one that many of us can probably relate to in some way: the problem of abundance. Both Abram and Lot were so prosperous that their possessions became too much for the land to handle. Imagine two massive operations trying to share the same limited resources. The pastures around Bethel could no longer support both of their enormous flocks and herds. The land was groaning under the weight of their success. It was a good problem to have in a way, but it quickly led to tension. Friction started to build between Abram's herdsmen and Lot's herdsmen. You can picture it: arguments over the best grazing spots, disputes over access to water wells. The very blessing of their wealth was now causing strife within their family. It was a classic case of resources becoming scarce, leading to conflict. And to make matters worse, the Bible adds a little detail. The Canaanites and Perizzites were also living in the land at that time. This meant the pressure was even greater. The space was already shared, and now family was fighting family. But Abram, as we've come to see, was a man of a different spirit. He was a peacemaker. He saw this growing conflict and knew it couldn't continue. Family was more important than property. Unity was more valuable than wealth. So, he took the initiative. He went to his younger nephew Lot, not with anger or demands, but with a heart of peace and a generous offer. He said, "Let there be no strife, I beg you, between you and me, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are kinsmen." Think about the humility and wisdom in those words. Abram, as the elder and the patriarch, had every right to claim the best land for himself. He was the one God had called, the one to whom the promise was given. He could have pulled rank. He could have said, "I was here first, this is my territory," but he didn't. Instead, he put the relationship first. His proposal to Lot was incredibly generous. He said, "Is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or, if you take the right hand, then I will go to the left." Abram essentially gave Lot the first pick, the choice of the entire land spread before them. He was willing to take whatever was left over, trusting that God would provide for him no matter where he ended up. This is a powerful example of faith in action. Abram wasn't clinging to what he could see. He was trusting in the God he couldn't see. So Lot lifted up his eyes. What did he see? He saw the plain of the Jordan Valley. And the Bible describes it in a very specific way. It was well-watered everywhere, lush and green, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. It was the prime real estate. It looked fertile, prosperous, and easy. From a purely human perspective, it was the obvious choice. The valley promised success, wealth, and comfort. It was a visual feast, an irresistible offer for someone looking to build their fortune. Lot made his choice based entirely on what he saw. He chose the beautiful, fertile plain for himself. And the Bible tells us he journeyed east, pitching his tents as far as a city called Sodom. This is a critical detail. The land looked good, but the verse immediately adds a warning. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. Lot chose based on outward appearance, on the promise of material gain. He didn't seem to consider the spiritual or moral environment he was moving his family into. He saw the green grass but overlooked the spiritual poison that was brewing in the cities of the plain. His decision was driven by sight, not by faith or discernment. It was a choice that would have devastating consequences for him and his family down the line, a story we will explore in a future episode. So Lot packed up his flocks, his herds, and his family, and separated from his uncle Abram. One went east toward the world's definition of success. The other stayed put, trusting in God's unseen plan. Now, imagine the scene after Lot departs. Abram is left standing, perhaps watching the dust settle as his nephew's caravan disappears over the horizon. He's just given away the best land. He's now in the less desirable, more rugged territory. From a worldly perspective, it might look like he got the short end of the stick. He acted generously, but now he's left with what's left over. But this is where God steps in. At this very moment of apparent loss, God speaks to Abram with one of the most incredible promises in the entire Bible. The Lord said to Abram after Lot had separated from him, "Lift up your eyes now, and look from the place where you are northward, and southward, and eastward, and westward. For all the land that you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever." Isn't that powerful? Lot lifted his eyes and saw a small, lush valley for himself. Now God tells Abram to lift his eyes and see everything in every direction. God was showing Abram that his inheritance wasn't just a patch of good land. It was a vast, unending promise. Lot chose a piece of the pie. God was giving Abram the entire bakery. And the promise didn't stop there. God continued, "I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring also can be counted." Think about that imagery. Dust. It's everywhere. It's uncountable. This was God's way of reassuring Abram, who was still childless, that the promise of a great nation was not only real, but would be more massive than he could possibly comprehend. What Abram gave up in generosity, God returned to him 100-fold in promise. This is a profound spiritual principle. When we act in faith and generosity, when we prioritize relationships and peace over personal gain, we open ourselves up to God's blessing in ways we can't even imagine. Abram's trust wasn't in the quality of the land, but in the character of his God. In response to this incredible divine encounter, what did Abram do? He didn't second-guess his decision. He didn't feel regret. Instead, he moved his tent and went to dwell by the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron. And there, once again, he built an altar to the Lord. This act of building an altar is so significant. It's an act of worship, of gratitude, and of recommitment. It was Abram's way of marking the spot, of saying, "This place, this promise, this journey, it all belongs to God." Every altar he built was a stake in the ground, a declaration that his life was dependent on God alone. While Lot was setting up his tents near the wickedness of Sodom, Abram was setting up an altar to the holiness of God. Their paths had truly diverged, not just geographically, but spiritually. This chapter is a powerful lesson for all of us. It asks us, how do we make our decisions? Are we led by what looks good on the surface, by the promise of immediate gain, like Lot? Or are we led by faith, by a trust in God's promises, even when it requires sacrifice and generosity, like Abram? Lot's choice led him toward worldly comfort, but spiritual danger. Abram's choice led him into a deeper relationship with God and the confirmation of an eternal covenant. He chose peace over conflict, faith over sight, and worship over wealth. And in doing so, he secured a legacy that was as countless as the dust of the earth. This story beautifully sets the stage for what's to come, reminding us that our choices, big and small, shape our destiny. And a life lived in faith, even when it looks like we're losing in the short term, is always the path to God's greatest blessings. Thank you so much for joining me today as we explored this pivotal moment in Abram's story. It's a rich passage with so much to teach us. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe so you do want to miss the next part of our journey through Genesis. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.